Welcome everybody to the launch of WiredScore Home in North America. My name is Tom Redmayne. I'm the North America Managing Director of WiredScore. Today is a particularly important day for us as a company, and we're pleased to be joined by hundreds of people across the US and Canada for this launch of our certification for residential buildings. Of course, while we'd prefer to be all together in person, it's thanks to technology more than anything that we're able to meet today, albeit virtually. Throughout the event today, you'll see social media handles on your screen if you'd like to share your participation online. We've got a great agenda for you today, including a keynote presentation by Dr. Andrea Chagou, co-founder and director of MIT's Real Estate Innovation Lab, the revealing of the most innovative buildings in North America who are the first to commit to WiredScore Home certification, and finally, some of the brightest minds in global real estate in a panel discussion around digital connectivity in the multifamily space. But before then, I'd like to hand over to WiredScore's founder and CEO, Ori Barendrek, to give an introduction to WiredScore.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I am delighted to welcome you all to the launch of WiredScore Home in North America. As we get started, I'd love to share a little bit with you about WiredScore and the reason we are all here today. Back in 2013, it occurred to me that now more than ever, we depend on digital connectivity to communicate and collaborate with the world around us. But you had no idea before you moved into a home or an office how good the connectivity could be. And just as problematic, landlords had no way of telling you how good it was. Digital connectivity is foundational to almost everything we do nowadays. And seamless connectivity shouldn't be an occasional luxury if you're lucky enough to stumble upon it. And that's why I created WiredScore, the world's leading certification company for technology in buildings. We launched WiredScore for offices at first, in New York, under the guidance of Mayor Michael Bloomberg. Bloomberg realized that for New York to continue to be an attractive place for businesses to base themselves, the thing companies rely on more than any other, high-quality connectivity, had to be provided in its buildings. The value of a rating system for connectivity in buildings caught momentum across the US. And then in 2015, we moved to the UK, this time in partnership with the Mayor of London. Since then, demand has led us to expand across the globe, opening offices and starting to work in France, Germany, Canada, Ireland, Italy, the Netherlands, Spain, Portugal, and Australia. Over those years, we've certified some of the most iconic office buildings in the world, from the Salesforce Tower in Sydney to the Shard in London and the Empire State Building here in New York. It's also true that the vast majority of the top 100 office landlords worldwide are already working with WiredScore. It was then in 2019 that we were able to focus our attention on the residential side of the market. We launched WiredScore Home, first in the UK with support from the UK government. Our driving thesis was and is that homes everywhere are evolving. They're becoming dynamic places, teeming with technology. Renters and homeowners now need to be able to stream films, play video games, attend class, and communicate with loved ones digitally more than ever before. Before the pandemic, it was actually recorded that Americans spend 6.5 hours a day online. And all of this results in a constant need for a reliable, consistent connection. Even more, with 80% of businesses now planning to allow employees to work remotely, at least part of the time, it will be landlords that meet the evolving needs of residents from a technology perspective that set themselves apart from the competition. What's particularly clear to me is that the expectations of our homes has changed. Our research report, which we'll share later in the event, shows that 4 in 5 Americans expect the internet to work like any other utility. It needs to be as dependable as your electricity or as your water. And the reality is that sadly, too many people are experiencing connectivity issues across North America. This is having dramatic effects on people's ability to work and to communicate, and moreover, on their health and on their stability. At WiredScore, we believe passionately in the power of connectivity and its ability to bring different people in different buildings in different countries together. to help them communicate effortlessly and to collaborate seamlessly. And with work-life practices evolving across much of the world, landlords now have the opportunity to take center stage and provide their renters with great connectivity in inspirational and future-proof spaces, underpinned by technology, allowing people to live their lives without unnecessary friction. That's why today we're so excited to be announcing the forward-looking landlords leading the way in future-proofing their buildings. With that context set, I'll pass it back to Tom, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Ari. As Ari said, we believe in the power of connectivity to improve people's lives. We spent thousands of hours consulting with investors, developers, owners, operators, and renters as we've built and tested our WiredScore Home product. A big thank you to everyone that's been part of this. To understand what renters care about, we've also commissioned research across North America. We've discovered that 8 in 10 renters have experienced Wi-Fi connectivity issues at home. In fact, that's happening on average 20 times a month. Those affected by poor connectivity are paying on average $337 per year on top of their Wi-Fi bills for extra mobile data. Half of all renters say that if they had known the property had poor connectivity, they never would have moved in. If you'd like to learn more, we've made this report publicly available on our website for you to download after the event. Renters' expectations across North America are rapidly evolving. These can be broadly classified as 5 things. Connectivity across the apartment. Is the digital connectivity across the whole apartment seamless, or are there gaps? Connectivity instantly from when you move in. Too often people are waiting weeks for an ISP to arrive. Smart technologies. Can I be sure that these are available within the building? Reliability. Can I be confident that my internet won't drop during an important call? Speed. Can I be confident that I'll get the right speed for the right price? To match these expectations from renters, we've designed a scorecard that has 6 core components: master planning, telecom room, infrastructure, services, monitoring, and innovation. Buildings are scored according to those 6 criteria, and we award them a certification level of certified, silver, gold, or platinum as a result. There are 4 key values that WiredScore bring to a multifamily building. The first is improved design. We want to ensure that you're making the right technology decisions at the earliest stage of development to make them as future-proofed as possible. The second is proactive asset management. We help you understand what is good and bad about your existing buildings, many of which were designed before the internet was even thought about, and provide you with a roadmap to improving the digital connectivity and presenting obsolescence. The third value that WiredScore brings to a multifamily building is to attract and retain renters. We translate complicated telecoms and engineering into a language that the consumer and the broker understands. Renters make the decision on where they want to live very quickly, and this allows your broker to clearly explain the quality of the technology experience that they will have in the building. And finally, the last value is to enhance your brand. The future of living will be built around experiences that are underpinned by technology. WiredScore Home is a lightning rod for creating the narrative around how a building is technology-focused and meeting the needs of the renter. To give you a snapshot of these values, I'd like to share a video of how a multifamily operator has used the WiredScore certification across their apartment portfolio.
Up and down streets everywhere, homes are evolving. And what we need from them is changing too. Access to the internet is now as essential as the roof over your head and a bed to sleep in. Kitchens have become boardrooms. Bedrooms are now tech incubators. And living rooms have become home cinemas. Wherever you are in the home, you are always connected. Visi Living understands that the needs of renters today have changed and is busy building a new stress-free rental experience. One based around a community, built by a friendly and transparent landlord, best-in-class customer service, and regular renter perks. But how does Visi Living ensure their buildings are ready for these new residents? They use WiredScore. WiredScore has set the global technical standards for connectivity in real estate, helping landlords improve the digital capabilities of their buildings, assuring residents that there will be no surprises with their connectivity, no buffering, and no dreaded freezes, meaning happy residents everywhere.
I'd like to turn our attention now to our guest speaker, Dr. Andrea Chagou, who is the co-founder and director of MIT Real Estate Innovation Lab, who's going to speak to us today about how the renter experience is due to change in the future. Over to you, Andrea.
Hello, thank you for joining us today. I'm Dr. Andrea Chagou, director of MIT's Real Estate Innovation Lab. The team at WiredScore has graciously asked me here today to share insights from our lab's research on the increasingly mixed and hybrid use of live, work, and play spaces. And importantly, what we have found at the foundation of this change. At the heart of this shift in space is the constant and continued expansion of connectivity that fundamentally supports the digital expansion of our society. Although hidden from plain sight, the tubes and wires and data centers that form the fabric of fiber optic connectivity is the basis of 21st century utility that will serve our growth and change for our economies and culture for at least the next 100 years. But now, more than ever, we feel this to be true in our everyday lives. In 2020, our response to the COVID-19 pandemic asked us to engage as a society in a momentous shift in who we are, how we engage, produce, create, and live. Humanity's push to create a better world increasingly needed digital technologies like the cloud, virtual communications, and sharing platforms that were all embedded in our global fiber optic networks. From a software and application perspective, there has been an explosion of an estimated 10 million applications since 2010 that have been created for our homes and offices. Hardware has also increased to offer more connected devices and sensors that help us to care for our children, aging parents, our security, and ecosystem. We've increased these types of devices available on the market to be in the millions in just under a decade. All in all, this requires a robust and expansive fiber optic network. And now, just for our work, but also now for our homes. After 2020, quality fiber optic connectivity and its role as a now essential utility in our lives is only more poignantly clear for all of us. What was required of March of 2020 was a significant proportion of the global population to seamlessly transition to a work, educate, and learn digitally, online, and in the cloud from our homes. The digital load shifted from offices, from stores, from transit, and to our homes literally overnight for many of us. And this was not for convenience. It was to save lives and shift the burden away from those who bravely fought on the front lines. What we learned so quickly is that sadly we have an infrastructure gap to support the whole of society to connect from home. Children were stifled from learning. Poor quality internet access had tremendous ripple effects towards inequality, productivity, and creation for some, and could mean an inability for families, in some cases, to connect during critical moments of familial loss during the COVID-19 pandemic. Time and time again, economic studies show that poor access and quality connectivity leads to lower economic growth and development, smaller community tax bases, and deteriorating communities overall. And for those fortunate enough to take connectivity for granted, they learned the importance of quality in servicing this utility and verifying that it can meet the demand for our digital and virtual households. Our society has expanded into this virtual, and after a year, this cultural and technological shift means we will demand a hybrid future of live, work, and play. According to a recent survey by EY, some 20% of office employees never want to return to the office. For others at Google and Apple, this is now mandated. For close to 100 million students that have shifted online globally, this will be the new normal to expand access and create opportunity. And for the estimated 2.2 billion in online games and virtual worlds, participants here are now at home, engaging in digital infrastructure as the foundation of their working and economic experience. So this world has become digital, virtual, sensed, and connected, and becomes more so every single day. And we will not be going backwards. From our research in the lab, we know that for the built environment alone, we invent 3 to 5 new digital technologies per year. And these technologies embed and connect into our fiber optic infrastructure. As these technologies layer into our buildings and our cities and our homes, they help to create differentiated products and expand opportunities and jobs. Although there is an opportunity for predation and inequality, we know that the long-run trajectory of growth and progress is more predominant in the long run of our history. We have also learned that this creates value for real estate. For example, for smart, connected, and green office buildings, there is evidence of rental premiums of 3 to 5%. And according to the Multifamily Association of America, there is evidence of multifamily rent premiums of 4 to 8%. But importantly, this research comes from our ability to verify that the infrastructure in place is verified, and in many cases certified to be true, to remove lemons. This process of standardization helps us to establish a foundation of growth for our society. And now, in our hybrid digital and virtual world, we require quality fiber optic connectivity to be where we work, where we play, and now, more than ever, where we live.
Thank you, Andrea. That was incredibly insightful. And now to the WiredScore Home launch buildings. We're really excited to be able to announce a remarkable set of multifamily buildings who are leaders in technology in this space. To take you through them, I'm going to pass over to our Global Director of Client Success, Shannon Shaw.
Thanks, Tom. We are delighted to be launching with 42 really impressive buildings from over 28 cities in North America. That means that over 14,000 homes are certified by WiredScore. It is my huge pleasure to introduce them to you now. From Essentris, Derby Roosevelt Row. From Essentris and Grubb Ventures, the residences at Glenwood Place. From BMC Investments, Copperleaf Apartments. From Cadillac Fairview, a project in Montreal. From CityView, Jasper. From Cogier and Greco, a mixed-use development in Montreal. From Crescent Communities, Novell Loso Station. From Divco West and Elcor, 151 North 1st Street. From Folger Pratt, a project in Washington, D.C. From Greystar, 212 Stewart Street and 25 North Lexington. From Grosvenor Americas, a project in Burnaby. From Hines, residences at Fenton, Northlight at Edge on Hudson, and residences at American Tobacco Campus. Also from Hines, residences at South Station Tower, residences at West Edge, and 1 Oakbrook Commons. From J.P. Morgan and Kane Realty Corporation, North Hills. From Kingset Capital, Valhalla Village. From Kingset Capital and Bentall Green Oak, 99 Gerard West. From McNair Interests, Remy on the Trails. From Optima and Essentris, Optima Lakeview. From Urbina Properties, a project in New York. From Skanska, 1800 Chain Bridge Road at Scotts Run. From Starlight Developments, 555 The West Mall and 297 Queens. From Starlight Developments and KingSet Capital, Art House. From the Green Cities Company, 5 MLK. And from the John Buck Company, Hurley Place. Well done to all of these buildings and their forward-thinking owners. And now back to Tom to introduce our panel.
And now to turn to our panel. We have an exciting lineup today of some of the leading thinkers on the future of multifamily spaces. I'll hand over now to Jennifer Kastenson, editor and VP at Zonda and contributing writer to Forbes. Jennifer, thanks for joining us today.
So thank you so much, Tom. It's an honor to be here, and I'm very excited to be with this expert group of panelists. And it's starting with Kevin O'Donnelly, who is NMHC's Vice President of Government Affairs. We also have Stephanie Furman, who's the Head of Innovation at Catalyst Housing Group. Charles Davis, who's the Vice President of Conceptual Construction at Hines. Andre Gierenkopf, the Senior Managing Director and Chief Technology Officer at Greystar. And Mike Hannock, who is Starlight's Executive Director of Asset Management and Marketing. Welcome, everybody, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. I'm really excited to talk to you about the importance of digital connectivity in the multifamily space. So we're going to break this into two different segments, and I'm excited to hear answers from each one of you to some specific questions, but please bring your energy. I want you guys to be responding, even if it's not directly to you. So let's have a conversation, dialogue, make it as interactive and engaging as possible. And like I said, we're going to talk about digital connectivity and why it's important in the multifamily space. And what people need and want is always evolving, and it's hard to keep track of, especially when we're in the multifamily space, and design and development takes 18 to 36 months. However, the advances in technology in response to the COVID pandemic and has kind of shifted our requirements and expectations, not only from the resident standpoint, but from property management and from the design and development perspective. So the buildings that we live in need to be able to respond to that. Andre, tell us a little bit more about yourself, and then tell us about what trends you are seeing that are making digital connectivity more relevant than ever.
Well, thank you very much, Jennifer. I'm leading enterprise technology at Greystar, and we are the world's largest residential multifamily property manager. We're also a large investment manager as well as a builder and developer of homes. And so we really get the opportunity to get the play right from the beginning, from the ground up. And when I think about kind of what you mentioned about connectivity needs and overlaying that on top of the 36-month development cycle, the most important thing today, I think, is that network layer connectivity. It's wiring your home, your building for site-wide internet, because that's really what provides the base layer for a lot of the things that you would consider as connectivity, right? It's smart homes, it's amenities that are always connected, it's the ability to control and interact with your building for you and your guests, as well as for the on-site personnel through a resident app or through a prospect app or a single pane of glass. It's the ability for the building to talk to the maintenance people and let them know when there's a problem even before the resident knows about it. So COVID really has accelerated that trend, because now people don't really want to have that handshake when they do, for example, a tour. They want to do it themselves, or if they have a maintenance issue, they want to just text about it, or even better yet, have it get resolved instead of walking down to the leasing office and talking to somebody. So what maybe 2-3 years ago in our mind was the way of the future and something we'll get to in maybe 2 to 3 years, all of a sudden hit us like a wrecking ball, and we said we have to do it now. So 1 year of COVID has accelerated our digital transformation roadmap probably by 5 years.
So how did you see that prior to COVID? Like, how did you see the connectivity issue? What were you hearing from property management staff on site? Were there no issues? And then all of a sudden COVID happened and you were getting responses on a daily basis from residents?
So I don't think that the nature of the request has changed, but the reality of it's a need that's here and now that we need to react to came about as a result of COVID. If I can use a simple example of payments. So in the past, we've accepted paper checks, and we didn't love doing it because you have to process them. There's a cost associated with handling a check. And so we always thought, well, let's drive our residents towards paperless payment options. And all of a sudden, when COVID hit, it wasn't a, oh, well, let's do it at some point. It's like, let's do it now. We need to get to paperless payments immediately. And that same pattern has repeated itself in kind of every area of the resident to property interaction and prospect and guest to property interaction.
And that impacts so many other things like security, cybersecurity. So I'd love to hear more about that, but let's move to Mike. Mike, if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself, and then also let's talk about how renter needs and expectations have changed, and what role landlords and developers play in responding to those changes.
Okay, thank you very much, and very happy to join this panel this afternoon. Just a bit about myself. I am the Executive Director of Asset Management and Marketing for Starlight Investments. We have 60,000 units under management in Canada and another 10,000 in the United States, giving us a total of 70,000 units. We also have a very robust development pipeline with about 60 projects in the development stage as we speak, in various stages, some in construction and some just waiting for permits, etc. So getting to your question, it's really, the onus is on the landlord and developers to, understand the expectations of tenants and what they're thinking when they're about to rent your apartment. And at Starlight, we're constantly doing research, and we're lucky in that we're doing lease ups all the time. And so, we have focus groups almost daily throughout several different projects across Canada. And so we're able to really tap into what tenants are wanting just in our own projects, but we're also looking at our competitors and seeing what they're doing as well. Prior to COVID, the focus was really on the amenities and specifically, flexible indoor areas where, there would be lounges, gyms, chef's kitchens, boardrooms, student lounges for studying, etc. And what we're seeing is now that with the lockdowns from COVID, and I can tell you in Ontario, where a lot of our properties are located, we've been in the longest lockdown in the world. So, and not something we're terribly proud of. But having said that, we have a lot of experience with dealing with tenants' demands during COVID. And what we found is people working from home, their focus has shifted, and really space became an issue, and people converting dens, second bedrooms, third bedrooms into areas that they can use for office space, flex space, gyms, etc. So we saw that, and then outside the apartment, the focus moved as well to safe indoor and outdoor space. And if we had a student lounge with cubicles, the proper spacing was there, etc. But what we found is, in speaking to tenants, really the tech piece became front and center, and be it technology like touchless technology for door openers, for elevator call buttons, parcel storage, etc. that became a forefront. And then again, the biggest thing was your connectivity and how good is your Wi-Fi. And we're leasing agents, they can answer the questions and our site staff, et cetera, but we really wanted to know that we're doing the right thing. And so we found with Wired Home, this was a solution to our issues and just ensuring that we're doing the right things at the in the boardroom and creating this development that we have this. So we're focused on best in class, and we recognize that the success of these initiatives and technology is really driven by the user experience. And we are very cognizant of what that looks like, and wanting to ensure that we don't have substandard connectivity and people get frustrated, because the reputational damage we don't want to even look at right now. And so we're very in tune of what the importance of connectivity is in the rental market.
Thank you, Mike. So, true or false? Do Canadians Canadians are way progressive. They embrace technology way more, better, faster than Americans. I shouldn't say Americans. Folks in the United States.
I would think, because we are exposed to our properties down there, I would say it's very similar. And it depends on the demographic. And I think you guys would all agree with me on that. The younger set, and certainly the students, they're all over it. Like, have you ever watched, I see it in my house, if the Wi-Fi is not good on their device as they're standing there trying to look something up, my God, the world's come to an end. And so taking that into the tenant base, we're seeing that as well. If it's an older demographic, maybe not as much, but my in her 70s mother, how about we stay there instead of telling her actual age? She's as astute with the technology as most. So in general, though, we find that it's the younger set, and on our student buildings, it's key for sure.
Fantastic. And every time you answer a question, I want to see a basket made.
Yeah.
So
we're still Raptors,
Kevin,
maybe. We're still feeling that. But yeah, it's interesting how quickly the technology moves, and we're always trying to stay abreast of it. And really, I find those focus groups, and when that's just a few questions and that we add into the tenant application process, just to get that information. And oftentimes the prospect may not even know that they're giving us this information, but we just want to know what's important to them.
Sure. No, that's great. So Kevin, NMHC has probably been inside out and upside down in the last 18 months. You guys have taken on so much and are trying to help guide the industry, manage expectations, manage fallout, everything. So what's happened? What have you done? What role are you playing, and what do you see moving forward?
Yeah, thanks. It has been a challenging, what I joke is a year, but it's been more than that. It's at this point a year and a half of a brutal economy, brutal pandemic, and I think our renters have been on the front lines in so many ways. So our folks from the C-suite down through all operations of multifamily have really been some of the greatest frontline workers out there, across the nation, across North America, in large part because we are home to over 40 million Americans. They turn to us for shelter, but we're their problem solvers, right? So in large part, their community, where they call home, where they take care of their families, is of huge importance. We and our members take that responsibility, very seriously. Whether it's helping them, track down rental assistance, or just to day-to-day life, ensuring that they have access to high quality, reliable connectivity, whether they can now remote work, whether they can remote learn, and frankly, keep their families busy with, entertainment. It's a job that our members have taken extremely seriously. I think, my co-panelists here have touched on it already. What has been a trend in multifamily, prioritizing connectivity, has only been accelerated by COVID. The reality is, I think someone said, it's been bumped ahead 5 years. I mean, the reality is multifamily was always, slow to adopt technology, using sort of the student housing sector as the testing or the laboratory for innovation, seeing what took hold there, what the next generation was going to want in their homes. And COVID really threw that conventional approach out the window. It said, we need to deploy technology immediately to solve today's problem. And that's, dealing with once in a generation pandemic that's going to, leave some pretty lasting damage. So for good and bad, I think the industry has fared really well. I think resilience is certainly the word that I would think of when I talk about the multifamily industry. And I think, by and large, we're leaving the pandemic, thankfully, in a much better place than we were. And I think technology has a huge role to play there. And at its core, it's all about connectivity.
So, with an association like NMHC, you guys map out your initiatives for years in advance, and and even the initiatives. And Doug Bibby, I mean, he stayed with the organization. So, what were you most surprised about, and what do you think you'll pick up after this is done? So, I know that's there's a lot happening there. And is everything that you were working on just now dead in the water?
Well, I think the NMHC strategic plan got tossed right out that window with a lot of folks, as so did our CEO's planned retirement. He's now with us until 23. So, and which we're grateful for. But, I think so much of, what we're doing, especially on the tech and innovation side, is really looking for what was, pre-COVID, sort of trying to forecast out a couple years. What are the trends and sort of long-term play for investors, for operators up and down the multifamily chain. And now we're really looking at what has COVID really thrown on our laps and what's going to stick. And I think if you look at a lot of the smart tech, that Michael touched on, or Andre, we're not going to lose touchless features. We're not going to lose a desire for more flexible space, both in the traditional living unit, but also in the common areas. Right? There's a deep desire for a lot of these trends to stick with us, and I think the consumer behavior that we're seeing more broadly in the economy is certainly spilling over to multifamily. The desire for more flexible work schedules means more flexible workspaces in multifamily communities. So I think that's really it. Is no longer just trying to forecast out a couple of years to see what the ROI is on technology or some new hot product, but it's really seeing what the consumer ultimately is going to see as the new must-have feature, in or outside their unit.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin. It's very exciting, and we'll have to be tracking what you guys are doing. So, Stephanie, you've had a lot of different roles within the industry, and now you're with Catalyst and you're tracking innovation, investing in innovation. What disconnects do you see between the types of living environments renters want and what owners and managers are offering?
Sure. Thank you, everybody, for letting me join. I would say that the biggest disconnects within the industry right now are a lack of standards, and some of the systems that are being installed have incongruent data privacy policies, as well as how the integrations themselves work beyond just the smart home into the building technology, into converged networks, and how that parlays into implications for both property management and owners is it creates an inconsistent experience for both the team members as well as the residents. So I think there's a fairly big change happening in the industry over the next 2 years, where we're going to see some of the networking companies actually introduce technology that is going to drastically change how that experience comes together in new developments. And I think the biggest issue will be in existing communities where either the coax cable in older communities or Cat 3 to Cat 5 wiring efficient enough to really meet the demands of the residents. 5G in all of its promises, I think, will lend well in certain communities, but in high-rise communities, I don't think it's going to offset some of the disconnects in dead elevators, dead hallways, and lack of flexibility as it relates to connectivity.
Why are there disconnects? Like, what are the challenges that developers and owners are facing? Is it a cost issue or
I would say in new
regulation?
development that, yeah, I would say in new development, the technology is actually changing faster than the developers make decisions. They have to hold a percent of the budget until the very end. Setting standards as it relates to what you deploy in that development plan becomes really critical and important. On the retrofit side, I think it's a completely different game. You're having to deal with existing infrastructure and retrofitting cabling based on existing contracts and or the infrastructure of the building itself becomes complicated and expensive. There isn't always an immediate return on investment, but you can do a number of things as it relates to integrating smart home equipment, really as it relates to systems and controls that make a significant, create a significant value proposition to the residents themselves.
Yeah, Andre, she's talking about you guys, and what do you think about what Stephanie has to say?
I think she's right on the money regarding the difference between new construction and retrofits. I mean, if we can get, I'll be surprised if we'll see 25% penetration of kind of full building rewires on a retrofit. With a low-rise garden property, it's a little bit easier. If once you get into urban high rises, unless that building was designed to have cabling pulled through it, it's very difficult. And as I mentioned before, that network layer is really foundational for enabling this experience. I don't know that I agree that necessarily the network companies are the ones who are going to unite everything from a software point of view, but they're absolutely a base layer enabler that if you don't have site-wide Wi-Fi there, you're really limited in kind of being able to deliver that full experience that unites the building, the resident app, and the property manager app.
Awesome, good insights, Andre. So Charles, hi.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. So,
Yes, thank you.
absolutely. So we want to ensure that the design and build teams are collaborating and thinking about the resident experience as they're collaborating. What steps is Hines taking to make sure that this happens?
Well, our design teams, they've got to translate all the great ideas that we have into contract documents. And I think it's really important for the owners to be involved in selecting the technology consultants and then communicating all of the goals for the project to their consultant team. The goals for each project from a Hines perspective is to set new standards of quality, innovation, and to create long-term value. And we only are able to accomplish this by considering the renter experience with every decision. One of the first things Hines does with the project team is to review our OPR, which is our owner project requirements. And we set goals that are large goals, like, do we want to have this project be a wired score project, those types of things. Or do we want to pursue LEED, as an example. But we also get into great detail and detail in the design. So we actually have a lot of parallels with our OPR process and what WiredScore actually does. So it actually is pretty beneficial that we are well rehearsed with what WiredScore is actually looking for as well. in our OPRs, we have project directors on the project, our operations team, leasing, IT, our conceptual construction group team members that I'm a part of, and also our consultants are a part of that review. And we try to give very clear direction to our design team through that. There'll be ideas that come about, from all of these different aspects of different people looking at things differently. And we may have to study some aspects of the project and not make decisions right away, but ultimately we have to give direction to our design team so that they can create a clear and complete set of documents, drawings, and specifications that can be bid. So another part of this that I'm involved in is selection of the subcontractors. I sit hand in hand with the general contractor in interviewing subcontractors on most projects. We ask a lot of questions. We want to make sure that they understand our requirements for the job and also understand our project goals.
So while we were during the pandemic, no one could meet in person. You're not doing charrettes, you're not face to face, you're not talking about the design and the requirements and so on and so forth. That make the experience better or worse? And how were you able to bring technology into that process?
It was very surprising of how well we really have adapted to Zoom meetings and online calls and reviewing documents online. It's been an incredible eye-opener for us. As an engineer myself, I'm used to paper documents. I'm used to looking at drawings. I'm used, you can't take that with you, from home to work and to the different places where you're working. So, technology, we've adapted to it very, very well. But we really have missed that personal connection with our contractors, with our design team, and just to share our culture and become a team with those different players. And also, from project to project, I'm having meetings with consultants on one project, and then we're meeting on another project. Well, I have to connect those two, where as we're having a face-to-face, we become friends. It's more personable, as opposed to just doing things through a computer screen.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see how the technology gains traction now that we're going back to how we were. What will continue to exist, and what will help power the human connection as well. So that's exciting, very exciting. Now let's kind of switch gears. We've talked about some of the trends, and now I want to talk about how you are each responding to the trends. Mike, how can landlords keep up with the rapid change in technology? I mean, it's so hard to train your staff and to know exactly where to make an investment. So, and to align that technology with your brand and what you want to be representing to the tenant. So give us your thoughts, Mike. How is Starlight adapting to that?
Yeah, it's a great question, actually, and one that just when you think you got it figured out, there's something new, and that's what makes it exciting, I feel, and it makes us better. And so, how do we get better, and how do we keep our finger on the pulse of all this? Is really collaboration within our teams. And so it's the asset management group, it's the development group, it's the leasing, it's the marketing, it's the CapEx group, and we have all kinds of different sessions where we're just sharing ideas. An example I can give is last week we were at a building that we've just completed, and the lease up is just about to commence, and we're looking at, okay, what do we like, what do we don't like, in pretty much every element of that building. So we had a variety of people and going through it, and so that's how we come up with what we think, where we've missed, where we think we can improve upon. But then again, it's really about, as I mentioned earlier, it's really knowing your market and doing your homework and checking out the comps and really having a vested interest in, okay, what do tenants want and how can we provide it? And Starlight, we're really embracing technology, and we feel like everyone on the panel, it's something we got to do. And so, in as we go through this, what we're looking at doing and have just launched is is Orbit Home. And so Orbit Home is going to be how we brand our technology, be it our parcel storage, be it the smart home technologies, be it the EV chargers, what have you. It will all be branded under the Starlight Orbit Home. And we're doing some cool things that we're looking at. I was on a meeting this morning and we're talking about our EV chargers looking like maybe R2D2 or C3PO or something. And we're all obviously playing off the Starlight and thus the Orbit Home. We have a cool thing that we're hoping to be able to use where it, similar to other platforms that are out there, asking a question while you're in your apartment and saying, Houston, what is the temperature in the bedroom, or whatever the case, but it's always going to be Houston, we have a problem, and that kind of, and play on words there. So, we're trying things, but it's really embracing it and looking at all things that can make the tenant experience better, and more importantly, that they get the value add. So they feel that moving into this community is going to give them the value add through they're paying the rent, etc. They're getting good value for what they're living in. And by doing this, we also feel we're going to have a step ahead of our comps through this process. So that's what we're up to.
I love it, and I love the Orbit and the Houston. That's fun. It makes it fun for the residents. Do you have, just very quickly, in 30 seconds, do you have like a formula, an ROI, a metric that helps you make that decision on a technology to invest in?
Yeah, we do. Obviously, yeah, it's nice to think, and I'm using my marketing brain now where we don't maybe focus so much on budget as maybe the development guys do. But yes, of course, there's metrics in it. As much as we would like to launch everything, we're doing it in stages and just seeing what kind of response we get. So it's still in early stages. So to say I have a template of how we can look at the return on the investment, it's still a work in progress.
Okay, well, we'll look for the template next week. All right, so Charles, what can landlords do to future-proof their multifamily buildings, if that's even possible? But I'm sure you're thinking about it. How do you think about it, and how are you approaching it?
Well, there's really two parts of the future, right? There's a future that we know about, that we can predict based on what's going on in the market, what's going on in the industry. We can see a little bit into the future, and really with some level of certainty. Then there's the unknown future, right? There's technology out there that we don't know about yet, and we want our buildings to last and to continue to be able to evolve. How do we deal with the future that we know, and how do we research that? I mean, that's really what the landlord must be a part of. You have to research and understand the technology that's out there now, and how Hines does that really is we really hire great consultants. They're forward thinking, they're innovative, and they inform us of the future technology. We research new companies and new trends. We rely on our partners, both the financial partners and other partners in the industry, like our service providers, manufacturers, and we learn a lot from our tenants as well. We also share a lot of information really globally across Hines. So those are all ways we deal with the things that we know. For the future, really, that we don't know, all we can really rely on is the history, right? So we know that technology trends are, equipment really gets smaller. It doesn't get bigger. So we hope that the spaces that we have in our buildings can accommodate the equipment of the future because of that trend. We also can be innovative in creating pathways for things that we don't know, and try to design our buildings so that future technologies can get implemented really without a lot of disruption to the project or to the tenants.
I love that. And you mentioned learning a lot from your tenants, and I think it'll be interesting how that evolves and how we can be secure with doing that, and how much we can actually learn from them with their permission I think that's an exciting frontier for us. Stephanie, what are the best technology innovations that you have seen in the market, and what is Catalyst attracted to right now?
I would say there's a lot of activity in the market, and there's a lot of new innovation. Some of the best happening in construction. Construction tech, I think, is going through definite evolution, and I think we're seeing a lot of advancements there. There are some specific technologies that we're really excited about that are still kind of in stealth mode and anticipate that they're going to be coming out over the next 6 months, most having to do with some form of artificial intelligence and really trying to improve the experience. I would say the table stakes for us are really around being able to provide network connectivity, access control, making sure that we have those base foundations so that we can start to streamline a lot of our operations.
Yeah, absolutely. Streamlining the operations is huge, especially in a time where, actually, so let me reframe that. As we move into the eviction moratoriums and how things are changing, I think that a lot of property managers are pretty nervous about what the future looks like and also excited about what the Biden administration will have to offer. Are you seeing sort of technologies pop up to support all of that?
I would say that, we have the benefit of starting from a blank slate as a startup. And so what we've decided to do is we've decided to process map every part of the prospect, resident, property, and management lifecycle, and really start from the foundation of having 0 employees, either at the on-site level or corporate level, and then working backward to where we need to re-add human interaction where it's highest and most valuable, and using technology at the other intersection points to really try to advance the platform. We're early in that, but we're evaluating technology from that lens.
That's great. Exciting. I think that would be the hardest job ever. Like, I would want to embrace every sort of technology and innovation. So moving to you, Andre, Greystar, what kind of technologies is Greystar embracing, and are you starting to consider like future next generation technologies such as 5G, which I think Stephanie mentioned before, and what are you doing about it? How are you approaching it?
So I think that last question is really key. My team gets blasted by, I don't know, 20, 30 new vendors per week with all sorts of ideas, everything from smart homes to resident apps, CRM, parking, package delivery, you name it. If somebody's tried to, Uberize our pools. And it's very, very difficult to select the things that you want to focus on. So the key is really being very systemic about the process. So to that effect, we innovate from the center, but our innovations are informed by the KPIs that are important to the business. So we've gotten together with our property management, investment management, development, construction teams, and we've built out the KPIs that we want to move. So for example, it might be net operating income per property. It might be the lead to lease ratio. It might be the CSAT for residents or number of maintenance personnel per 100 units. And based on those lenses or in those dimensions is what we apply to kind of our innovation funnel. So the company comes in, we say, is this an area that we are interested in? No, eliminated. If yes, let's look at the field. And this is always constantly changing, so you always have to keep your ear to the ground. But here are the 4 or 5 top players based on our interviews with them. After that, let's go do an RFP. Let's do a sandbox experiment where we try all 5 players and actually measure a baseline before and a baseline after by adopting their technology. What we're finding is that there are really a lot of very exciting players with a lot of very good ideas out there. But in many cases, these are point solutions. And so you have, your best concierge services offering. You've got your 2 or 3 best smart home solutions. You've got your 2 or 3, lease cost optimization solutions. And where I see the biggest innovation happening and kind of where the market is headed is we need to tie all of those together. And so I'm not sure if that's going to come from a leading player in the industry, from PropTech, or from an operator, or from a property management system. There's multiple people vying for that kind of seat. But I solidly believe that 2-3 years from now, we're not going to ask our resident to download 6 different apps, one for package delivery, one for perimeter access, one for parking, one for the elevator, one for paying their rent. There has to be a convergence, and there's just how do they say it, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, where the experience for the resident is so much more comprehensive when they can do everything from a single screen. And likewise, the opportunity for the owner and for the operator to be able to tie these experiences together into more advanced use cases is really fantastic. So if I can tie my prospect experience to the smart homes, then I can do a self-guided tour. And if I can now tie in a paperless lease, I can immediately convert from a prospect to a resident. And then if I could tie in, a moving forwarding service, then I can set up a really great onboarding experience to the resident and probably also make additional revenue in the process. And that chain just goes on and on and on. And that chain is more valuable than every link in it.
Andre, so true or false, it's really attractive to find technologies that reduce the need for human capital?
I think it's true, and it's true for 2 reasons. It improves customer satisfaction, and it reduces the owner's operational expenses. And it seems like those 2 things at first are at odds with each other. Like, how do you give white glove service when you have fewer people? But the reality is, most of our residents, most of our prospects, they want an instant response any time of the day or night in the channel that they want to talk to us. And you can't guarantee that with people, you'd be growing a giant army. So for example, when that prospect sends an email at midnight saying, hey, can I schedule a tour for tomorrow morning? Yeah, we want an AI agent to respond to them and say, yes, of course you can. Here's your code, come in and just scan that and let yourself in. And it's a better experience all around, both for the prospect or the resident, and it's a better operating model for the owner.
I love that, and it's definitely things that we have to be thinking about moving forward. So thank you, Andre. Okay, so Kevin, I know at NMHC you are thinking about new government policies and how they're changing and how you guys are influencing them to help drive better technology experiences for the residents. So what does the future look like?
That's the $1 million question. I think for us, at NMHC, we're obviously, tracking federal policy and the way it impacts, the industry, it impacts our renters. And I think, despite the change in presidential administrations over the past, 6 months or so, we've really seen a ginormous shift in the way the government has leaned into technology and connectivity. And that goes across the board. We've talked a little bit about AI, and, the government's actively working in that space. They're, obviously providing, huge support, unprecedented levels of support to broadband deployment and access issues. Those are things that we think are here to stay. And I think will be of great benefit to, multifamily and its residents more broadly.
Okay, so everybody else on the panel, now's your time to get requests in from Kevin.
Yeah.
Okay, so this has been just a phenomenal discussion, you guys. Thank you so much for your time, Kevin, Stephanie, Charles, Andre, and Mike. Thank you very much. Great conversation, and we hope that we can continue this conversation into the future. And now I want to pass it back to you, Tom.
Thank you, Jennifer, and everyone on the panel. That was a great discussion. What stood out for me was the panelists' unanimous agreement that the past year has caused digital transformation to be accelerated by 5 years. Buildings are now computers with roofs on them, and those that get it right and design the technology within them to provide greater renter experience will hugely benefit, whilst those buildings that do not adapt face the risk of obsolescence. That brings us to the end of our WiredScore Home launch. I'd like to thank our panelists, our amazing keynote Andrea, and our launch partners. So what happens now? We'll share the content that you've seen today with you directly afterwards. Please do read our report, which you'll find on our website, and look out for more thought leadership in the weeks to come. Thank you for all joining us today. Hopefully we'll be able to see you all in person soon. Have a great day.